I recently realized that for a good chunk of my life, I could go a whole day without even spending 5 minutes alone with my thoughts. Every single aspect of my daily existence was fueled by stimuli, a constant input of noise that I rationalized as valuable podcasts or educational videos that somehow aid my personal growth. I felt something had to change. So I took a leap and physically removed myself for a month from life as I knew it. And that's how I realized firsthand what had been unsettling me. A realization at once enlightening and yet so obvious. I don't know how I missed it. I have no clue how to rest. So this video is a story about 1 month that made me ask myself, what the hell is rest? You see, I spent last January, a bleak and grey month where nothing but cold and rain happens, in a tiny seaside town. To be fair though, the weather here is much more agreeable than where I live. Anyway, here in winter, you can only go out to a mediocre coffee place or a good pizzeria, both only open on the weekends. As a bonus, I also consciously decided to not use social media or YouTube and see what happens to me. The pattern was as follows: anxiety and intrusive memories from the past, then absolute boredom, and finally spontaneous creativity and self-reflection. After the initial week of adjustment, I found myself constantly bombarded with writing ideas, plans for my future, or how to improve things back home. It seemed as if there was a severe backup of energy that was repressed for a long time. Only towards the end of the month did I finally start to fizzle out and long for more stimulating activities than hiking or reading. So only after enduring the tension of change is when the major turn towards my realization happened. I was forced to put in an effort to spend my free time. If you have been following this channel, you know I made a whole trilogy of videos about classical music, and don't you worry, there's a final 4th one coming. Music has kept me company for as long as I can remember, but up until I discovered classical music, I rarely listened to it exclusively. It was always following me around while I was doing something else. But when I found Chopin, he demanded my full attention. So I found myself engaging in something unthinkable for any normal person in their 20s. During my breaks or after work, I would get my best pair of headphones, sit down by the window, and simply solely listen to music for hours on end. Crazy, I know. Suddenly, I was the one engaging with being in a way that was meaningful to me individually. I took the active role. The spoon-fed passivity of a phone screen lost all its meaning in the face of it. An outer change made me bored, which in turn motivated me to expand energy exploring, which then led me to inner experiences that brought symbolical treasure in the form of meaning. Speaking of symbols, around that time I was reading Carl Jung's autobiography, for me probably the most important person in the history of psychology, and a particular part of it unexpectedly disturbed me. The way he described his leisure during his youth in an era without TV, radio, not to mention social media, it struck me how focused, intense, and engulfing it seemed to be for him, yet how painfully boring by our modern standards. Jung's reality was a constant contention with boredom and having to find ways to occupy himself with something meaningful. He spent his time outside, wandering, exploring, building things, reading endlessly through his father's library, and pondering questions important to him for long periods of time. What struck me wasn't how impressive this sounded, but how completely alien. My experience of life ever since primary school was inseparable from a screen. Anyway, there's a particular memory from Jung that really stayed with me. His father took him on his first trip, at 16 mind you, during which he went to see the opera. This is the closest in his life up to that point that he got to entertainment, and he vividly recalled the moment even at 85. This is the effect entertainment had on him. What stuck with me wasn't how poorer that life was, but how it was so quiet that a single evening of music could leave an imprint for life. This made me wonder just what meaning is left in it when we are so over-entertained today. Anyway, after that January, I started paying more attention to how people go about their rest. I noticed a reoccurring problem my psychologist colleagues would talk about during consulting sessions is a constant lack of meaningful, truly relaxing leisure. Their time was spent either studying, working, or sleeping, with leisure being not doing that. What struck me is that most of my colleagues had noticed the problem and tried various app blockers or screen detox or screen time restrictions, but all eventually admitted to relapsing. I recognized myself in that immediately. Oh, how many times I quit watching YouTube shorts. You see, I realized an underlying problem here is not a lack of awareness or even a lack of discipline, because restriction alone does not answer the deeper question. What is the habit doing for me? While, as the popular advice goes, dumbing down your phone or practicing boredom is well-intentioned, tackling the problem from this angle is inevitably doomed for failure. Artificial conscious abstinence is a costly and losing battle of willpower. Consciousness is no match for the unconscious, and anything that breaks through the abstinence, however tiny or momentary, usually breaks down the whole defense, and before I know it, I relapse back into 2-hour scroll sessions. I grasped that merely removing outside stimulation was not enough. The answer is not to become a hermit. The way out, once I saw it, felt embarrassingly obvious and paradoxical. My experience during January led me to grasp just how much our leisure has been hijacked and warped, how alien we have become to ourselves, numbing boredom and our inner voices every second of stillness we get. And it's a vicious cycle, because the more we numb, the more backs up that now needs to be numbed more, and so on and so on. I think unconsciously, nowadays, rest has become synonymous with doing nothing, and that is just wrong. Furthermore, I have found that by suppressing boredom, we become boring ourselves. That energy has to go somewhere. When we repress and obstruct this natural, no, essential part of our psyche, that energy goes into the background and starts to spread around us. I think that is why we constantly have nothing new to say about ourselves except discussing what our pets are up to. For at least they seem to be enjoying their lives, or sharing memes our personalized algorithm fed us. In the end, instead of feeling boredom, we become boring. What I realize now is that leisure, paradoxically, requires effort. It should be meaningful, engaging, and crucially active, whether intellectually or physically. Free time is supposed to allow you to reflect, process, and step away from whatever you spend most of your energy doing. It should serve as a balance provider in your life. Let's say you have a very active, multitasking job and a family with 3 kids. When you spend time fishing, something that takes effort to wake up early, drive somewhere, and so on. For a change, you can focus on a sole activity that is both relaxing and meaningful to you. Have some time to process the everyday chaos, and god damn it, just watch time go by for a change. We are conscious creatures, not merely productive cogs that only need oil to keep spinning around in the machine. Part of our being is just to observe the surrounding world. Leisure is where this essential part of being a human should happen. Social media and other similar forms do not provide any of what I described previously. They just hijack your attention for their own profit and only serve to numb you by imitating that they provide something meaningful. Let's be honest, how much of what we consume daily actually benefits us in the long run? And even if so, at what cost? Personally, I am unable to focus on anything after scrolling shorts for just 5 minutes. And you know that it is never just 5 minutes. I think what happened is we got addicted to lazy, effortless being where we observe others living instead of doing that ourselves. And that is precisely why conquering back your free time by taking on the active role again is so life-changing. All right, big breath. All of this is to say, these are just my reflections and not commandments. When I got back home last year to my regular life, I had trouble stepping away from YouTube even for a week. I always seemed to find a weak spot to go back for just one video, and I'd stay for hundreds more. I'm not pretending to be an enlightened guru who persuades you to become a minimalist nomad. No, I think we're all in the same boat, and I just wanted to share my realizations on our current course. However, what I have learned is that a bit of effort for a bit of peace and quiet can go a long way. So, I'm going to take a long walk now and let my intrusive thoughts haunt me for a while. Sometimes they have useful things to say.